Hey, this is Soma79, host of the Articulate Ox podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is the third episode, and we have a great one here for you with guest Kimberly Tronic. So I've known Kim for a very long time, 20 plus years, and she's been a very close friend of mine for pretty much since almost the day that I met her. And she's just one of those people who I once joked with her that I consider her one of my best friends, but I bet everybody who's ever met her considers her one of their best friends, because she's one of those people who treats everybody like she's their best friend, and it's a really admirable trait. And she's just a wonderful, amazing, warm-hearted person. So unfortunately, she had to deal with cancer in her life, though she did a little bit of making lemonades out of lemons, because she wrote two pretty amazing books about her cancer journey. She wrote two cancer memoirs. First one came out a few years ago, Dear Diary, Does This Cancer Make My Ass Look Fat? Great read. And then she has got another one, because unfortunately her cancer came back for a second round. She has a new book that just came out a couple of weeks ago called Dear Diary, Cancer is Back, Gimme Snacks, My Salty Sweet Saga 2.0. Another great book from Kim Tronic. So Kim decided, after doing these couple of books in the process, she decided she was going to take a different path in her career going forward, and she is now in nursing school, and she studied to become a nurse, and partially inspired by her own journey with cancer and all the amazing medical professionals that helped her out along the way. The books are they're funny, they're poignant, they're sad, they're everything you would expect out of a cancer memoir, with Kim's own little twist on it, which I think once you meet her and listen to the conversation, you'll understand why her perspective is so fresh and unique, and why she's somebody with a really, really important voice. So I'm not going to waste too much time here up top. I just want to get right to the conversation with Kim. So I appreciate you listening, and add me on social media at Soma79 on Instagram and at Soma79.com on Twitter, and follow and subscribe. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Articulate Ox podcast, or as my guest refers to it, the awkward ox or the obnoxious ox or whatever. I don't even know what it's called anymore. But my guest today is Kimberly Tronic. I can't believe I'm calling you Kimberly. It was a hard time finding your book because I kept looking for Kim or Kimmer. Kimberly Tronic, author of, she's got a new book coming out, Dear Diary, Cancer's Back, Gimme Snacks, My Salty Sweet Saga 2.0. I said that way more fun than I probably should have. But what's up, Kim? How you doing?
First of all, thank you for having me. I know it is weird referring to me as Kimberly when you and I have known each other for so long, and I'm either Kim, Kimmy, Kimmy Cat, or Kimmers,
Yes.
A lesser known fact. But I appreciate you adopting this sort of more formal title, which I've tried to also adopt in the more recent years, and it's very uncomfortable. It's like a sweatshirt that's like super rigid and doesn't fit. So we can revert back for the purpose of this chat back to Kim. If
that's funny. I run into the same thing, because there's some people who refuse to call me Timothy. And that's what I go by most of the time. Usually, I mean, it's not Soma, but that's what I go by. And it's just, some people are like, nah, we ain't doing that.
It's like verbal starch. It's just stiff, but
yeah, it rolls off the tongue.
Yes. But thank you for having me. Thank you. No pleasure chatting with you. I am doing awesome. I'm just gearing up for school to start in a couple weeks. I think, as you know, studying to become a registered nurse. So clearly that'll awesome. Just be thank you. A very simple, smooth process, I'm sure.
Yeah, you'll go. I mean, my mom was a nurse, so it seemed like she would never, but no.
Oh yeah, very low stress.
Right. She worked in the ER overnights when I was a kid, when I was growing up. So.
Yeah. Gotcha. So she's well versed in the joy, I'm sure, of the 12-hour overnights.
Yeah. She's seen some shit,
As one does in the ER, as one does.
Yeah, as one does.
But yes, thank you for allowing me to invade the podcast space here. As you mentioned, book just dropped on Amazon a couple days ago. So, don't have any reviews rolling in yet, but my mom said it was funny, although I swear way too much. That was my first official review. It was just too many cuss words. So I've tried to be conscientious of that, on social media and outward. Yeah. But you do flip through these pages, then there was let's see, at one point when the manuscript was done, I had it in a Microsoft Google Doc. and I believe it was 187 pages in a Google Doc. So I did like the search F function, which is fine. And I
Let's just
typed in,
find the F word.
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So I typed in the F word to the little search box and it spit back, this word is there 187 times. And I was
It's like the script for Goodfellas.
yeah, I was like, I couldn't have planned that better. There was one F bomb for every page.
I didn't even do that math.
Yeah, it was 1-to-1. And so at that point, I kind of stepped back and I was like, maybe my mom is right.
Yeah.
It's a little excessive because when you think about it, when you use it so often, it sort of loses its potency, right? Then it just becomes so run of the mill. You keep hearing it and it loses its punch. So at that point, I was like, all right, Kimberly, let's dial this back.
Yeah.
And
Now that I'm a Kimberly, I can't average that, the 1-to-1 ratio in the F word.
Well, when you're in trouble or when you have to be stern with yourself, it is the full name. So at that point, it was Kimberly. Let's like dial it in a little bit. And I cut out a chunk of them. So is it children friendly? Absolutely not. It's still probably rated R for poor language choices.
Well, you're a rated R superstar in my book. So all right. So I don't even know where to start here. I do have your first book here, which I read in one night when I got it. Dear Diary, Does This Cancer Make My Ass Look Fat? It's a great book. I read it and it really I mean, I've known you for 23 years maybe. And I could really read your voice, and you told me a lot of this story as it was happening, and then it was in the book as you told me. So I mean, I guess I can fact check this. Yes.
Yeah. Like, this is boring. I already heard this the first time from her mouth, but okay.
Yeah, but I have ADD, so I probably only caught half of it, and I was probably so sad. You know that.
Fair. But, yeah. Gosh, that to me, there's such a world of difference between book 1 and book 2. And I'm sort of curious to see what people are going to say who have read book 1, and then we'll go ahead and read book 2, because the intention with book 1 when I was writing it was not to publish a book. It was literally just a diary, me sort of just, regurgitating my own fears, thoughts, resentment, everything down onto paper to just get it out and process it, right? And something I kind of liken that to is if you've had a bad day at work, for example, you talk about it with a friend or a loved one or whatever. And I think the process of getting the words out and getting out your frustration does help you process and move on. So that's exactly what the journal entries in book 1 were at the time. And then as that year went on and I started chatting with my wonderful therapist, the idea kind of, congealed, coagulated that like, yeah, maybe it would make sense to share this. And at first, even too, that was just going to be a small little ebook. I wasn't going to have a designer or an editor. And that sort of, churned over into like, why not? Why not put more effort in and bring a designer on, bring an editor on and really go for it. And I did. And then I thought, like, that was it. Yay, I wrote a book. I beat cancer. Go, Team Kim. And then the following year, my blood work started coming back a little suspect, and we weren't sure if anything was wrong. And that's sort of when book 2 picks up. It's 8 months, I think, later after chemo ended. Things were good. And then, book 2 sort of just rolls into like, ooh, we're kind of keeping an eye on my blood work and we're not really sure and kind of don't like what we see. And then it very quickly spirals into like, crap.
Yeah. And so this might be a good time to mention you're in a pretty good place right now, right? I'm not trying to be like go on some HIPAA shit here, but like just to, put people at ease who I'm sure are already in love with you because you can make friends and at a freaking toll booth, but you're doing pretty well right now.
Thank you. Yes. And actually, as I'm stepping into nursing school, I am very, very paying close attention to HIPAA. I just had to do a bunch of modules on HIPAA. So I appreciate the mention. Hey, HIPAA, totally being compliant. What's up, guys? But yes, thank you for asking. I am doing great now. At the end of book 2, it wraps up in October of 2019, I think, just as I was getting like my double mastectomy, I think. I think that's right. I've had so many surgeries now, I kind of can't keep track. But book two seemed like it ended at a great place in that book one was just coming out. I was getting like this breast surgery I've been waiting for. And it seems like, cool, this is kind of like that moment in like the sitcom where it all wraps up nice. It didn't wrap up nice. Cancer came back again and again in my liver. I had to get breast reconstructions because I had like collapsed breast pockets. And yeah, gosh, I think as of right now, I've had like 9 surgeries. I've been under anesthesia 11 times. I had 24 chemo sessions. I had a dose of radiation. So the laundry list got real long after book 2 wraps up. So it's kind of funny, but I'm like, I'm not writing book 3. We are done. We are
I
good.
know.
I'm sticking a
Yeah.
fork in this.
Hopefully cancer is not like she's got another book in her, you know.
That would
It's
be the, oh my gosh,
it's
that
I
would be the
know.
uncool list. Yeah.
I know.
Like I
And I
want to
think
write
too,
fiction.
you have other books. You have other books in you. Like I mean, I know that you're such a good writer that I know that there's other things I'm sure you'd probably love to write, you know.
Yeah, actually, I have like a half finished kind of, how do I say this? I have a half finished saucier book, spicy, risque. I'm not sure the classy way to word this in case my mom's watching. Um, it's kind of like a collection of dating stories, and it has kind of like a custom cocktail recipe to go
Oh,
along with each
yes, you
one.
told me
There's
about that. Yeah.
yeah. Then you go back and read that. My writing mentor, who's a professor of mine, who's now a good friend and a mentor, he's read that. He was kind of like, you might want to put this under a pen name. So I thought of a pen name because if my parents read that, I don't think I could ever look them in the eye again. So
Yeah.
I may do something with that at one point. But where my sights are very much set now is I have this fiction story that I've been wanting to write since college, which, gosh, if we can count back the years, I don't
I
know if I can
know.
count back that far. It must have been like the early 2000s. But I came up with this idea for a short story about this family, and they have these crazy secrets that are all sort of intertwined. And I put it down at some point. I think I got frustrated. I think I was trying to write it as either a film or TV show. And I'm not good at script writing. So I put it down and just let it collect dust for 18 years, 15 years, something like that. Then during the pandemic, I took an online writing workshop from the gentleman who edited both of my cancer memoirs. And he's a brilliant author and a brilliant teacher. And his week-long workshop was, via Zoom, and it just put this whole new spark back into me to breathe
Yeah.
new life into the story. And so now I'm working on the character development. I have kind of a timeline written out of all the events that are happening. I know these characters very well by now, and so I feel ready as I'm about to start a full-time nursing program when I won't have time to start writing that. So
Yeah. You're doing something bad to me now because you're reminding me that I have a book from back then. I think I used to send you passages to it that I had about 100,000 words written of, and now I'm like, I wonder if that thing can be saved.
of course it
Yeah,
can.
it was called
Yeah.
Cloverleaf Spider Dove was the name of the book, which that might I know it's ridiculous.
Does it deliver what it promises to, that title?
I don't know if you can. I don't know. I should put that into like an AI art thing and see what it spits out because it's meaningless.
I mean, I feel like that if you did that with the AI art, you might just have your cover done right there,
Yeah, I
right?
know. I mean, it's I feel like just mentioning that title is like, nah, let's not work on that.
Listen, titles can be reworked, okay? As long as the content is exciting, that's all that matters. So,
Yeah, yeah. But
just
it is funny though, because I mean, I finished my album Drinking Songs for Children, which will be out next year, and a bunch of that music is stuff not only that I wrote back in the day, but recorded. Like there's one song on it where the first verse I wrote and recorded when I was like 28 and 27, and the second verse I wrote and recorded like last year at the age of like 42. And that was sort of the idea of the album, is that it's like the Drinking Song for Children is about like arrested development in some ways, so it's trying to play off of those different ideas. So
yeah.
it's like some people, I in the podcast I've talked to different people here about their relationship with their art from the past, and there's a very wide range. Like some people are so embarrassed by it, but usually you can find some good stuff. I mean, you find a different version of you who doesn't think the same way, but when you reconnect with that, there's something powerful can happen there.
Sure. And I kind of like what you said about how you wrote the original part of that, or the first part of that, 27, 28, and then you get to the next one, last year or whatever, is that right? Like, so
Yeah.
there's this giant well of time that goes on in between. And it's funny because I think, as artists, we always sort of evolve, right? And just grow. So I think it's kind of fascinating to sort of meld where you are at and what your perspective was and what your creative
Right.
process was from back in the day with what it is now.
You know what's funny about that, and we'll get back to what we're here to talk about in a minute, but just trigger this thing. So when I wrote the first verse of it, it was what I consider to be probably the best verse that I'd ever written. It was the song Garden State Syndrome back then. And I named it that because I had taken a day off of work because I was so depressed I couldn't get out of bed. And I'd never seen the movie Garden State, but I put it on, and that was a movie about being so depressed you can't get out of bed. And there was a line in it that just triggered something in me, and I just hit pause and I wrote the entire verse. It's a really long verse, like basically right then. And that was like what I considered one of the best verses I've ever written. And then cut to this year, that was the last song for the album. Somebody else was originally on it, and they decided they didn't want their old thing out there, which is totally fine. And then the guy I was working with is like, look, we have to get this done ASAP because there was some technical reasons why we had to get the album done ASAP. And that was all that was left. And I once again wrote it out almost in real time, like I did last time. And that's like never happened in between, but there must have been some sort of sonic connection there. So.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was some part of, your psyche or whatever it was that was like tapping into like, oh, right. And it kind of bridges everything together. And I think that's like kind of beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Less me, more you. I haven't even mentioned here the topic that you chose. It is, I have the vinyl here.
Oh
Tig,
my gosh.
Tig
Yeah.
Notaro, her Live album, which I would have assumed it was live. So I'm glad I looked it up. It's as Wikipedia told me, pronounced Live. So I'm gonna give you
Yeah.
the quick reading here off Wikipedia, just so we can get the background here, people who don't know. Live is the second album by American comedian Tig Notaro. That's how you pronounce that.
Tig
Notaro.
Notaro.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
It's a deeply personal set performed just 4 days after Notaro I think I just said it wrong there, was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. The album was first released as a download on Louis C.K.'s website, fuck Louis C.K., in 2012. It was the first release that CK featured on his website by a comedian other than himself that was no longer available, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this was a set that she did right after she found out that she had cancer. And it was, you would have to imagine, largely improv because she,
Yeah.
as much as you can plan a set with 2 days when you receive news like that. So it was a very special moment in time. I had always heard this existed. I had never heard it before. It was nominated for, I think, maybe Grammy Comedy Album of the Year that year, but lost out to Kathy Griffin. So they don't always get it right. I'm
Fair,
so mad
fair.
that Mark Cohen beat Naughty by Nature for Best Hip Hop Group in 1991 at the Grammys, but I'll get over it. So I when I put this on, it's different now because we know Tig's doing a lot better.
Right.
But wow. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah. Just that. Wow. That album was so incredibly profound for me because the story is, and I don't know if I included it in my first book, but I get my own diagnosis and it's just the biggest shock ever because I was 36. I was in otherwise good health. At the time, I thought I had no family history of cancer. We later found out there are a couple of people, but as far as we knew at the time, there's zero cancer in my family. So my diagnosis couldn't have come as a bigger shock. So at the time, I have a full-time job as a marketing manager for a tech startup, which I loved that job. I loved my bosses, worked with like the coolest people. And gosh, it was like a day or 2 or 3. It was very soon right after I got the actual news. And I was like, shoot, I'm gonna have to still like commute to work and like try and live a normal life among chemo and surgeries. So John, my awesome boyfriend at the time, and I went to Amoeba Records in Los Angeles. And yeah, Amoeba,
Yeah.
I'm sure. So we were like, you know what, let's like find some comedy albums. I'll start listening to comedy on the way to work. Got some kind of like meditation related things, just feel good things basically was the goal. right? Anything to cheer myself up, music, comedy, meditations, whatever. So I ended up going to the comedy section and just kind of picking out a bunch of stuff. And some comedians I knew, some I didn't, but I just got a good pile of them. So right after that, I'm doing the like 45-minute commute to work, and I throw in Tig CD. And this was so brand new. I still didn't even have time to digest the fact that, like, oh my God, I have like stage 3 cancer and I'm starting chemo like now, and my hair is going to fall out and I'm going to lose a bunch of my organs. I'm like, oh God. Right. So still, I think it was still so somber because it was still so new. And so I throw Tig's CD in my CD player and I'm driving. She's like, she opens up with like, hey guys, I have cancer. And that she kind of just like does these deep sighs. And I was like, okay, I feel that same. And she was like, with humor, the formula of comedy equals tragedy plus time. I'm just in tragedy right now. And I was like, me too. And so like everybody's laughing. And I was like, wait, like, is it okay to laugh? And so, like, as the jokes are rolling on, and it is so raw and so real, and like you said, much of it does seem like improv, because how could you write a whole set, right, when it was that new? But I really started to like relax as that set was going on when I'm driving to work, because I'm thinking like, good grief, like it is scary, and I know exactly how she feels, and she's laughing at it. So like, does that mean I can laugh at it too? And so that really was a poignant moment showing me that like, you can cope with humor, and as much as you hear it, that I needed to feel it. And that is the moment that made me feel it. Like, okay, this does suck and it is scary as hell, but like, I'm just going to try and laugh as much as I can and crack jokes as much as I can. And I did. And that moment set the tone for like literally the next like 5 years, when I was going up and down with all of my stuff. So
What's interesting about, I listened to the set again last night, and so obviously, you related very much to Tig, but in a way, the audience takes a journey that you can very much hear when you listen to that set. And I, as somebody who have dealt with this through you, not myself, has been the audience to this. And it occurred to me that at first the audience is a little taken aback and don't know how to react.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear them kind of come on board, and then you hear them sort of listen and then support her so much by the end. And I think it felt like there was a lesson there, because for me, that you don't know how you're going to react when someone tells you this. I remember exactly where I was when you told me. I was at the CVS in Cambridge by Harvard Square, and I left there and you called me, and I don't know where I was walking, but I was walking up Mass Ave, and I remember the exact set of steps that I stopped on. And every time I go by it after, I thought of you. Like, I remember like it was yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah. And
wow.
it's like
goosebumps. Oh my God. That's so crazy. Really? Wow.
Yeah. But like in the audience by the end, like, so to me, there was sort of a lesson, a reminder there in the audience, because at first they didn't know what to say, and that was okay, because it was something that they didn't expect to hear. But what they did is they listened and they learned, and then they supported her at the end. And I think there's a lesson there for how people in my situation can show their support to people in your situation.
I think that's such a key point. And in fact, just a couple of days ago, I did a different podcast interview with John Didakis, who is who I mentioned earlier. I think probably not by name, but he's the one, he edited both of my cancer memoirs, and he's now a very, very good friend. And this kind of exact topic came up, and I sort of just said it in passing, but he's like, wait, no, let's talk about this for a minute, which is, yeah, like people don't know how to react. And I acknowledge that too, because before my diagnosis, if someone said that to me, I didn't know how to react. What do you say? Right? It's like, as I think it's human nature to want to say something comforting and offer support and encouragement, but like, what do you say to someone that has bad news? Right? Do you just say like, you'll be in my thoughts, or be thinking of you, or you got this, or the old God doesn't throw you more than you can handle, cringe, or
we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh God, cringe. But my takeaway that I offered, and I do stand by this, and I've practiced this as well, and I'll tell you how, is I think instead of trying to brush over someone's pain or bad news by throwing out all of these positive things, which again, I know when you don't know what to say, that's what we just revert to. But if I can give any advice, I would say just listen, like you said, make someone feel heard
Yes.
and understood, right? And here's an example that I shared with John on the other podcast as well, is a good buddy of mine unfortunately had stage 4 colon cancer and passed away, I think earlier this year or last year.
That.
And it was difficult. She knew her days were limited toward the end, and she still somehow had a smile on her face. And so the last time we met up, we got coffee and just kind of chit chatted. And I remember very clearly thinking, like, God, I wish there was something I could say to lift her up or say something positive, but you kind of can't. So all I could do is just listen and just acknowledge what she's saying, right? And yeah, that does suck, or God, this is scary, or a lot more swear words, or yeah, this does effing SSF. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But just make that person feel heard
Right.
and acknowledge that, like, yo, I understand that you must be terrified and this sucks.
Right. You're sort of there to give that person a moment where they don't feel so alone.
That's
So that's sort of what your responsibility is in that moment, and what not maybe responsibility isn't the best word. That's what the person is looking for, and if it's someone you
That's
care
exactly
about,
it. And
do your best to do that.
yes, and I could not have worded that better myself. Is just it's like sort of the verbal version of like coming to sit next to me and like putting your arm around
Right.
me, right? You're just there with me. Gosh, yes, just like
Right.
meet me in my pain for a minute if you don't mind, right?
Right.
And I think like that's the biggest way you can support someone, and that means a lot in the moment when you're going through those tough
Yeah.
times.
Just be willing to sit with it with them, and
Totally.
and
I
help them
think that
process.
exactly. And I think the people that are more articulate than I call it like holding space for someone, I think.
Right.
I think that's what it's
That
called.
yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. I've actually I think I've heard that, but I've never really thought about it,
I think that's like legit what it means. Is like you're holding space to like sit together in that dark moment.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna Google
that
that
means
later, and it's probably gonna be like a sex term or something, but the British
in
say
which case
holding
then I
space
definitely
for.
appreciate it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, well, educate me.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, so exactly that means the world to someone.
Yeah. So I mean, this album has a lot of laughs in it. And I want to at least acknowledge here, like, we're talking about this in the context of cancer, but Tig Notaro was a really, really talented, amazing human being.
Yeah.
This is an artistic achievement as much as it is the achievement of the soul. But she achieved something artistically here, because for the audience to take that journey, she had to take them on that journey when she was in a very difficult place, and I think she deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. I'll also say, if you've never, I can't remember the movie now, but it was a Zack Snyder movie that went straight to Netflix, where Dave Bautista was going to Vegas and whatever, and she plays a helicopter pilot, and it's kind of a zombie movie, and she got put in at the end because Chris D'Elia did what Chris D'Elia did, and they pulled him out, and then basically digitally put her in the movie. And I swear, she's a helicopter pilot. She's amazing, and it's just, she brings such life to every scene she's in. I've never been so delighted to see an actor in a role before.
All right, definitely gonna have to find out what that is and give
Yeah.
that a watch.
It came out like kind of like in the first year of the pandemic. I think it was a decent movie. It was like an action movie, but her scenes are the best. So
She is special. She really is an unbelievable
very one of a
talent.
kind. Yeah.
To your point of what you're saying, excuse me, about taking the journey, sorry, taking the audience on a journey. I noticed, I actually went back and listened to it recently as well, just so it was a little more fresh in my memory, but I'd forgotten. In the beginning, she, is kind of explaining like, oh, I just got this news. And I guess like one guy kept going like, oh, and she calls him out sort of, and she's like,
Yes.
she's like, man, like this guy keeps saying like, oh, and then eventually she was like, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay. I might not be okay, but you'll be okay, and just sort of, oh my God, I just thought it was so funny. Like in the beginning, right? He keeps saying like, oh, like it's so tragic, but toward like at the end, you can like how hard they're clapping, how loud they're cheering, they're on her side with her, right? So she did sort of take the audience from this like, oh God, this is like a scary, tragic thing. Are we even allowed to laugh? The kind of nervous laughs in the audience. And then at the end, they're with her. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, she really is 100% talent.
So are there any particular parts of the performance that you think really triggered something in you, or really that really struck you, like particular jokes or particular lines?
Yeah, they're sort of how we just touch upon, you know, people sort of don't know what to say. So they'll say like, oh, thoughts and prayers, or, oh gosh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Cringe, cringe,
But there's
cringe.
no scientific evidence of that.
And like, maybe like don't say the word kill to someone that has
Yeah,
cancer. Like,
yeah.
don't want to tell you how to live your life, but yikes. So Tig had said, that someone said like, rest assured God never gives you, more than you can handle.
Oh, that
So
guy.
she's like, then, I picture God being like, you know what? I think she can handle a little more. Like, oh, that completely resonated with
And
me.
the
I was
angels
like,
are like, "Are you sure?" And he's like,
yeah. The angel's like, yeah, you sure? And God's like, hey, yeah, I don't think she's done. I think she can handle just a
"Yeah,
little bit more. Because let me tell you, that is how I felt many times. Like every time I thought things were fine and I was stable, like the rug would get pulled out under me again. And I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
even up till this last surgery I had was October 2021. So it was just over a year and a couple months ago. That was my last and most recent one. And yeah, we're confident slash very hopeful that that is the last one forever.
yeah."
But that ended up
That
being,
God's plan is complete. Like,
I know, I'm like, I know you think I can handle more, but I
yeah,
can't. I'm done.
yeah,
That ended up being the most brutal out of all of them. Like I had the hysterectomy and they pull out all my organs, and I was like, that was the worst pain I've ever been in, and then I get, this wretched like infection when I had my breast surgery, and I was like, oh my God, no, this is the worst pain I've ever been in. And then I get this massive liver surgery in October of 2021. And that surgery was like,
yeah,
get ready. And that ended up being the worst one. So it's kind of like every time you think, yeah, like things are, then they're like,
yeah.
but so that line definitely resonated with me. But I'm still here. We get through these things and you just gotta keep trucking, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, as someone who's known you for a long time, you seem to have had more life in you since you've dealt with this. Like you've seemed to have made, I see in you that you've made more time, you made more use of the time that you have,
Yes.
which is very inspiring. It's inspired me to do the same.
I'm
Um,
glad.
you're
Yeah.
someone who's always been very personally inspiring to me. You've always been very motivating to me in both the words you've said and the actions you take. So I appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's kind. And I thank you for that. And I do think there is something to that. As much as cancer took and took and took and took, it took my identity, it took like my physical self, it took my mental health, it took everything. I lost my job, not because of cancer, but I felt like I had nothing. Then, I recover and then I have to go through this other surgery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to 9 surgeries later. But I like at some point along the line, I think I realized like I can't wait for like everything to be stable and amazing to like do stuff, right? Otherwise, I would have just started like now after 5 years, but I didn't. So I think that was like one of my big takeaways was like, okay, start taking care of yourself better, which I did. I cut way down on drinking. I eat really well. I work out a lot. I try and prioritize sleep and hydration, and more than anything else, mental health and meditation and journaling and taking care of like, my mental health and my spirit sort of. I was very much neglecting that before my diagnosis. And gosh, I continued seeing my therapist for all this time. We took a small break like in the recent months, but we're actually starting up again as I'm starting school again, because I think it's so important to have a practice to just maintain your mental health. I like seeing mental health talked about more in mainstream, and the sort of taboo being removed from it, because it's so crucial. I don't think you can have total health without mental health.
I was talking
So
to a friend earlier today about mental health, and we were talking about that. He was going through an issue with his family, and we were talking about therapy. And I'm like, the thing you have to think about therapy is that we're not always objective about figuring out what's best. Like, we're basically paying somebody to look out for our best interests because we're not always good at that. And
right.
it's essentially like sometimes you need to go, I need somebody objectively to tell me if the things I'm doing are really in my best interest or not. And that's how the way I've kind of treated therapy, and I've always gotten a lot out of it.
Agreed. If there's one thing I could take away from, looking back and being like, gosh, I should have done that, which I know you should yourself, but I should have started therapy way earlier. The way I used to perceive things, the way I used to talk to myself, it was just so toxic, but I couldn't see that. And now, even now I have the wherewithal and awareness. I still do talk to myself terribly, but now I'm at least aware, and I'm like, no, that's not true.
Right.
Stop in your tracks and now say something nice to yourself. And that's so terribly
I know.
uncomfortable.
Because there's a thing that I like to say is that if I talk to other people the way I talk to myself, I wouldn't have any friends.
That's yeah, that exact thing. I've thought so many times to myself, like, oh my gosh, you are an awful writer. Oh my gosh, like physically, like, ew, like,
Yeah.
people don't like you. What's wrong with you? Then you stop and you're like, would you say that to your friend? Of course not. So you have to really, but the awareness, that's what matters, right? Is just stopping it in its tracks. Because I think intrusive thoughts, it's hard to control them coming in.
Yeah.
But once you recognize them and you put the pause on it, and to sort of wash that back is forcing yourself to say something nice. Ooh, I hate that part, but I do it
Yeah.
because, gosh, how awful and awkward is it to look in the mirror and be like, you're so awesome.
I know.
Cringe.
It's tough, especially because as I'm working on this film, even this podcast and stuff, I was talking to a coach on these different things, and they talked about how important it is just to do things in the mirror, and just it's very helpful, and it is also very uncomfortable,
It is.
to
There's
practice talking in the mirror to yourself, or it's
totally.
tough.
And one thing, and I don't think I've ever admitted this out loud. So this is like a,
This is an exclusive, what, I can't remember the name of, articulate ox exclusive, obnoxious ox exclusive.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is an exclusive.
I'm taking a sip so I can spit it out when you say it.
Oh, well, you might. No, it's not so shocking, but oh gosh, but I loathe to admit this, but why not share it, right? We're here to share. Is uh, I've very much struggled with like physical self-image just because of like scars upon scars upon scars, and the irony is I'm like in the best shape of my life at 42. So I'm weightlifting like 5-6 days a week. I'm eating well and taking care of my body physically, and yet I think most of it stems from like my organs coming out, and then I got a stomach scar, then another stomach scar, and then these breast scars, and there's just scars on top of scars. So it became really difficult for me to look in the mirror. And this part is in my book, which is like for a full year, I like showered and used the bathroom with the lights off. I think it was a full year, and finally I'd like force myself to go in and take a shower with the lights on, and it was just so hard. But to kind of move beyond that, I did that as I started looking in the mirror and being like, oh gosh, even with no clothes on, like on the way to the shower, like forcing myself to look at myself and being like, no, like you look good. And it felt so fake and it felt so wrong because I knew inside I hated how I looked. But here was kind of like there was like the turning point that made it a little more palatable, is you kind of just like do like a booty shake and like sing a really like silly song, whatever helps you kind of just like, do the little booty pop or whatever and do a little dance in the mirror. That actually helped warm it up into being like, all right, actually that's not so bad. So say what you will, but a little booty pop, if you're not wearing any clothes, you want to feel a little bit better. Just
I think
saying.
the right song for that is "Party in the USA" by Miley Cyrus. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
I don't know. Sometimes it was Usher just being like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good one too. Yeah, yeah. It's,
So
I
I
guess
highly
it's dealer's choice.
yeah, whatever works, honestly. But
Yeah, I
yes,
can totally relate to that too. I've dealt with, I mean, different sort of body issues. It's the difficulty in looking at yourself, the difficulty in what you think you see and what other people see. It's a yeah,
self-love is a hard thing.
it
It's
is, it is. And you know
right,
what too is, I think one of the biggest keys to mental health starts with self-awareness. And I think you're a pretty self-aware person. And I think for me, some of my biggest victories have come from becoming pretty self-aware and then realizing, where I was uncomfortable and then pushing myself through that stuff. Is that basically recognizing, okay, this is something I learned a while ago. Most things in life either get worse or they get better. They very rarely stay the same. So when you look at things in your life and you go, okay, this may not be horrible now, but do I want it to get worse?
right,
If not, then I need to make it better. And
right.
I've taken that attitude towards a lot of changes that I wanted to make in my life, and I found it to be, fairly successful. So
Good for you. And I think you just nailed it. Is I think a lot of self-growth, starts with that awareness. And it's so uncomfortable again to just like look inward and look at yourself and being like, what do I want to change? Right? What do I want to better about myself? But if you can be really honest with yourself about things that you'd like to improve, I think like, and you work on those things and then those things improve, like what's more awesome than that
right,
is I think like fulfillment and excitement and true joy lies from in that growth or grows from that growth.
yeah.
So
And
I think
that
that
word, the word joy you just said, is a word that I think about a lot. Like that's what I try to strive for in my life is joy. Like the moments where I can say that I'm feeling pure joy. I mean, that's what I strive for now. And it's I don't know. I never thought about the concept of joy until a few years ago.
yeah,
You know,
same,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's
If you can like find those moments and just take a super quick pause button and be like, wow, I feel joy right now. Like I don't think there's anything better in life
I
than
know.
feeling joy.
Because
I
it's
think
fleeting and it's funny, even if you say that. So it used to be, what gave me joy is when like a new Marvel movie came out and I took like a decent dose of edibles and went to go see it. I literally felt joy the entire time, left the theater feeling joy. Now I can do that same thing and I had a good time, but it's not joy.
right.
It's just,
Yeah.
and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we got to. And obviously, it's like that's it touches on so many things in my life and my childhood and stuff, and it all combines. But those
Sure.
moments are important. It's important to take that time for yourself.
For sure. And but actually you made a good point though. You use the word fleeting, right? And I don't think anyone feels joy 100% of the time. I
Right, it
think a
wouldn't be
lot of
healthy.
like right. But also too, like then it just you get used to it. Sort of like a wonderful coffee table that you love and is amazing. But when you walk by it every single day or you put your feet on it every day, it kind of loses its
Right, or bang your ankle
specialness.
into it like I do.
Yeah, yeah, and then you
Yeah,
become mad at that awesome coffee table. But I think what gives sort of weight and definition to joy are the crazy dark moments, which like those can suck a lot, but like also sort of highlight when you do feel joy. And I think you can work on feeling joy more often in your life. That like that's the goal, right? But I think it's impossible to strive. No one feels joy all the time, and it wouldn't even feel like joy because then it just becomes the norm. And that's I
right.
don't think that's possible.
Well, I
But
sometimes think of it in terms of like you need. They say in life that you need to be ready for opportunities to come up.
sure,
Because it's basically you have to be at your best, and the opportunities come up, you can make the most of those. And I think by taking care of yourself and eating healthy and being on a good sleep schedule and doing exercise, you're putting yourself in a position mentally that when joy is adjacent, you can meet it halfway. And I think if sometimes when you're not doing those things, there are joyful things around you that you're just not able to latch onto. At least has
agreed.
been my experience. And
Yeah, I think that's completely true. And also
you need to give yourself a fighting chance. I think Jim Carrey said something about that, about depression. And if you're not doing, you need to be doing those basic things to give yourself the fighting chance against depression.
I agree. And I'm not sure if we mentioned too, like in addition to eating well and sleeping and hydration and taking care of that, I think that mental component is a giant piece of that as well, because I think if you're doing all of those physical things to take care of your body, like obviously that's extremely crucial. But if you're neglecting
Right.
the work on trying to, I mean, everybody's got their own thing, but I think like journaling is just so amazing for realizing things and helping you get to a place where you are more self-aware. Or, I think meditation works great as well, but if that's also not for everyone, so be it. But sitting quietly, I think, and trying to remove some of the clutter and some of the noise, because we're constantly being bombarded with social media and movies and TV and entertainment and like everything. I think taking quiet time to sort of like let that fade into the background so you do become more self-aware. I think those things like just stay hand in hand with the physical betterment.
So since you admitted something that you haven't admitted, that just triggered something to me that I'm going to share something kind of personal about that relates to what you just said. Because I hadn't really thought of this, and I'm glad you mentioned that the mental aspect is important as everything else I just said, because it reminded me of what happened to me early in quarantine with COVID. And I was in a pretty small apartment, just myself and two cats. And I've been used to working out all the time. And I just could no longer go to the gym because, for obvious reasons, everything was shut down. So I got one of these kind of under the desk elliptical machines that are really just designed to be going at like a kind of a slow clip during the day. But I treated it like I was literally timing myself every day, trying to beat it, like shave seconds off my 1 hour score every day. And it's like, it's just me and like literally I'm taking this thing past its level. Like it won't, I know I'm going faster, but it won't record it. And I got good calves. What do you want? I worked on them.
Right.
But as it was going, like the combination of the angle and the machine, me not using it right, was sort of like fucking up my left heel. And it was hurting more every time I did it. And I was just like, well, I'll just put a bandage on it and I'll whatever. But no, the OCD in me wouldn't allow me to stop. So I kept doing it and doing it. And eventually I got to a point, and I think it was when I moved from the apartment out here, that was sort of when I started taking care of myself mentally. That was, I realized, and part of this helped me. I ended up moving the apartment and buying a house and further out in the boonies. But I had to end up wearing like tape on my foot for 3 months because it wouldn't heal. And like it was essentially where I was eating healthy, I was taking care of myself physically, I was
Right.
doing all the other stuff I just said, but I wasn't taking care of myself mentally. And I essentially had a physical wound from a mental health issue that I created
Yes.
myself. And I was realizing that was a sort of okay, well, we need to just take a step back for a minute.
Yeah. And that's a key realization, right? Is, the body's speaking to you physically because something mentally kind of wasn't totally in check, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's sort of a example, I think, where if you do neglect your mental health, it does manifest itself, right? There's one thing that's always intrigued me is, cardiac issues and like heart problems being like so prevalent in this in this
Yeah.
country. And obviously food can contribute to that, but stress, right? They say stress kills, right? Heart attacks, the cortisol in your body. And I
Right.
always found it so unreal that like something that is mental anxiety becomes physical. Your pulse starts racing. I've had more panic attacks than I could count, and it
Me
still
too.
blows my mind that something that's completely not physical, just thoughts, can get so out of control and manifest itself so exponentially that like I'm gasping for air and I'm crying and my heart is pounding and
It's
I'm
like your
like,
body's having a migraine.
yeah,
It
you
is,
know?
it's that level of uncontrol. I've had those panic attacks where I couldn't stop my teeth from chattering and I couldn't stop shaking.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
physically I couldn't, my teeth would be chattering and I couldn't stop shaking from not just my brain. I haven't had them in years, but like they were really
Yeah.
scary for a while.
It's pretty wild how powerful they can be.
Yeah.
It sounds like yours are more in control. Mine are also more in control now, but I do like that we're having bigger conversations on a larger scale about the importance of mental health. And I remember one time I've gotten to the point now where I can feel the panic attacks coming on, so I
Yeah.
can kind of squash them down before they get as out of control as they used to. But I remember one time I was frantically, it was starting and it was getting bad. So I was frantically starting, I was looking for a meditation, not just for panic attacks, but to listen to in the middle of a panic attack. And I found one. So I frantically was like, play, 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 play. And the lady's voice was just so calming. And I remember what she had said is, what you're experiencing is nothing more, than thoughts that got a little bit out of control. You're fine. Your body's having just a reaction from your thoughts. And that's something that you can, control and make better. So you are okay. And I was like, oh my God, if this lady on YouTube says I'm okay, then I must be okay. And I ended up being.
She was right. It's
Right.
funny too. So one other little tip for people that worked for me is that, that technique they say that if you can't sleep, I haven't done this in a few years, but there's a breathing technique where you breathe in for a certain number of seconds, hold it in, and then exhale for a certain number and repeat it. And it takes 15 seconds to do. So you do it it drastically decreases the amount of breaths you're taking a minute. I believe that's what it is. And it helps calm your body down, helps put you to sleep. So I started doing that when I was having a panic attack, because I knew that I was doing something to help relax my body, because your breathing is so central to everything you do. That to me and sometimes it was literally I was fighting physically against the sensations of the shaking to do it. But it was either that or just accept how bad it was going to feel. And I could fight back. That's what did it. So.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, anxiety it's a brutal thing. And a lot of people, struggle with it. And with all the chaos that's been happening externally, I think it's no surprise that people are just having a rough go at it. And, that's just external stuff. Then you bring in things like worries about finances and relationships and health issues. My goodness, it's a lot, but
there's so much to be anxious about. If you're not anxious, you're not really paying attention.
Yeah, for real. What do I want to stress about today? There's so much to choose from.
At some point, not having anxiety will be what people go to the doctor for. That they go to the doctor and they're like, all right, I know I should be losing my mind right now, but what's wrong with me? I'm not.
I'm calm. Yeah.
I've never seen someone like you before.
An enigma. I know. How do I get to do what that person is doing?
I know.
But well, hopefully we can all take a breath, take a collective inhale, pause, exhale together, and move into a exciting new year and be healthy this year together.
Yeah, definitely. One more question I had for you. So in terms of your how did this change you change your career trajectory due to this? You talk a little about that, how some of the experiences that you had in dealing with the hospital that you dealt with in California when you were out in the Los Angeles area were really very touching, and some of the energy that you brought to it, and you could see it struck me. And this is something that I don't really want to. I've always found that the more energy and enthusiasm a person brings to their medical appointments, the more they get out of it. And I know it's not like they're going to give you better care because you get a rainbow wig on, but energy is infectious.
Yeah, it is.
So how was there a journey there between your relationship you had with the people that you met along the way in your recovery and your treatment, and how you decided to change the path of your own career?
That is such a great question. It was such a gradual choice to go from, my prior career as a digital advertising copywriter into healthcare. And actually, one of the conversations was a conversation I had with you back in, I think it was 2 years ago now, when I made this decision to start pursuing healthcare.
Oh, yeah, I remember now. Yes. I remember that conversation.
That was a very poignant conversation.
That was right when I moved in here. I think I just made a big mental health move myself. So I was
I think part of what you back to what we were saying earlier, you made me feel so supported and heard and understood, making this journey from, a creative person with creative ideas and endeavors and working in a different industry, but making it all just kind of work together and come together and still being able to do both things. And you made me feel so understood in that moment. And I felt so much more assured about switching from being a full-time creative copywriter into being a nurse. And the journey was very gradual in the sense that before I made that choice, I've always cherished my doctors and my nurses and all the healthcare workers that had, any part in my journey, because they made it so much easier. And to this day, I'm still in touch and very friendly with a good chunk of them, through text and social media, and a couple of them in person still. And so I've always cherished those people as individuals, but also as part of, this network that saved my life. And then time goes on, and then we get to the pandemic, and I started sort of just asking the question to myself. I was very busy writing a bunch of cool ad campaigns, some of them actually for the medical industry, and some of them, ironically, to promote a conference about the anti-cancer drug that I was myself taking. And I was like, this is interesting.
It's weird how that stuff lines up sometimes. It's really bonkers.
I was just, right. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to promote a conference for people to go to about a drug that has kept me alive. Good grief. So that's very cool. Again, and I was a lot busier during the pandemic because everybody was moving their businesses online. So there's a greater need for online copywriting. But there was a very poignant week or month where I suddenly thought, is this something I want to do for 10, 20, 30 more years, is writing ad campaigns? Is that really what fills my heart? And I
especially now that an AI chatbot can do that in 2 seconds.
For real. That would have saved me a lot of time. Yeah. And I kind of realized, I think I want to start more towards a career in healthcare. So for a while then it was like, well, okay, can I do writing and marketing in healthcare? So I kind of kicked that around, and then it, kind of came back to me like, no, I think I want to actually do something more and take care of people. So then I thought about very seriously pursuing physical therapy for oncology patients. And I looked into that, and that did seem to be the direction I was going to go. And then a buddy of mine, actually, who did one of my surgeries, one of my best friends, said, I think actually you might do well with nursing. Then I kicked that around, and then the conclusion was, it's time to be a nurse.
I mean, I will say that whoever going to a doctor, going to a nurse can be a scary experience for a lot of people, and who that person is makes a big difference. And I'd say anybody who is having a bad day and they're going in to see you, they're going to be lucky to have you as a nurse from a personality perspective, or how seriously you take everything. I would be excited that if the person jabbing me in the arm or doing whatever was you, versus a lot of the people who have done that to me. So,
fair. And thank you. And I appreciate that very much. And I hope to do for my future patients what my nurses and doctors have done for me. And I think that's where I know this is going to be crazy going to nursing school, and I'm walking into a very giant dumpster fire of a profession in terms of nurses not getting the support they need, which we've seen for how many years now. But
as long as there's been nurses,
and exacerbated by the pandemic, but absolutely. Yep. I think where I do find a moment of peace, though, is the idea of literally sort of just paying it forward and providing those moments of assurance and of kindness and of love and of care to people that my team did for me. And I still remember just clear key moments from 5 years ago, from my first chemo session and my second chemo session. And this, I forget so many details of so many things along the way, but what I don't forget is how those people made me feel.
That's a huge thing, is that people, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had someone pass away from cancer a few years ago. I have her picture right over there. She was a coworker of mine. And I'll say her name, Bethany Whitman. She was one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. And I bumped into her twice after I left the office in a parking lot somewhere. And I don't remember what we talked about, but both times I remember how I felt after, and and I was like, wow, I really, just talking to her for a minute or two made me feel totally different.
Yeah.
And when she passed, like I had no idea she was even ill. Like, I guess she, but like when she passed, it was a gut punch, because those feelings and I've lost a few people like that to cancer, where it's like
Yeah.
the people that really make you feel that certain way, like, when they're not there anymore, it's a loss for everybody, because if she made me feel that way, she made everybody feel that way.
Exactly. And that's it. I think it's moments from middle school, moments from high school. You may not remember words people say, but you can usually remember how they made you feel, right?
Yeah.
And I think therein lies some of the power in trying to provide good health care. And especially, gosh, when it comes to like something as scary as cancer. I mean, as the patient, there's like nothing but like uncertainty and fear. So, when your healthcare team, like something as simple as like one nurse held my hand and I was like,
Right.
thank you, and I just felt so supported by her. And during one of my chemo sessions, one of my buddies, I'm still in touch with him and I love him dearly. He pulled out his cell phone and showed me a picture of his dog. And I was like, okay, chemo can wait for a second. Can I see more pictures of your dog? And so like, he let me, he was so sweet. He handed me his phone and let me flip through his phone. And I was like, that just meant so much to me. And
Yeah.
it's stuff like that where you don't forget it. So
No.
it's my turn. I want to pay it forward and do that for other people.
I remember when I was a kid, I was in the hospital a lot as a kid. I had like scarlet fever and pneumonia at the same time. I was like a bubble boy. I was in the tent for like in the hospital for like part of first grade. And I remember they'd give me shots and they'd put me in this little booth, and there's a picture of Hulk on one side and a picture of Captain America on the other side. And they'd be like, look at Hulk. And like, you know what? And I have a Hulk action figure that I bought like 3 months ago. So
Oh my God, that's
who knows,
amazing.
it's, these people it's, they see you at these really, medical people see you usually at your worst and sometimes at your best, and they're there for you either way. And it's like, I have so much respect for what you're doing. And like I said, my mother's a nurse, and it's like,
Yeah.
the fact that my mother's a nurse is not a reason why I respect nurses. That's like being like, oh, I have a mother. Like, why would I ever say that about women? like,
Right.
but
But
like,
you get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
deserve all the respect in the world.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. A lot of heroes out there, honestly.
So I
So
had one other little off-topic thing I just thought of that I wanted to ask you. Because now when you mentioned LA, it triggered something. So you lived in Los Angeles for a long time, for probably close to almost 20 years, right? Or maybe.
just about 20, actually, if not a tiny bit more, or no, just under. I think it was like 19 and a half, but yeah, almost 20
Right.
years.
Now, anybody who's ever been to LA for 20 minutes comes out with some sort of ridiculous story. And I was thinking about one. This isn't super ridiculous, but it always makes me laugh. And I was going to ask if you have any. So I'll give you a moment to think about it while I tell this quick one. That you and I were having lunch one day. I forget where it was in Los Angeles. And someone walked by the table, and it was a pretty empty restaurant. I look up and say to him, like, that guy looks like Dick Clark, but only younger. And then I look back over 2 seconds and I'm like, oh, that is Dick Clark. And I was like, it was such like, because everybody said he looked so young for his age. And it's like, literally, it just came out of me impulsively. Then I'm like, oh, that fucking is him.
Yeah, that's the thing with LA. It's sort of known for, oh, that person looks like so and so that's famous, and then you take a
Yeah.
beat and you're like, because it is so and so.
Yeah.
Like
I
that
had
happens to me.
I had
What's
another
that?
one where I was at the Grove and I was going to see either Jersey Girl or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or something. I was by myself and I was getting a hot dog first. And I could hear the guy in front of me saying to the hot dog guy, he's like, Scream, Deadwood, and he's rattling off these things. I'm like, these all seem like Timothy Oliphant things. I look up, I'm like, that's Timothy Oliphant. And I could tell that a second before the hot dog guy was like, where do I know you from?
So he's just listing off things.
Right. And it was
Yeah.
such a rare thing where you're like, usually when you see a celebrity, they don't help you by listing off what they do. But like this guy was like, yeah, that's him.
Yeah, that's
Quite
yeah,
quite a
that's
handsome man, I must say, too. He was you know, but
oh, Totally. I have a couple of good ones. I mean, my favorite one was Jennifer Carpenter, and she was in front of me and my boyfriend John, at a grocery store. And we only had like margarita mix. It was like 11 o'clock on a Friday, and she had a full cart. And she turns around and she's like, "You guys can go ahead of me." And we both kind of stood there like, okay. So we do go in front of her, and then like he and I were like, "Should we say something?" Like we love her so much. So we kind of quietly were like, "We loved you and Dexter." Like yeah. And then she was so sweet. She chatted with us for like a good 6 minutes. But I think my favorite one is oh gosh. Okay, so I was waiting tables in like 2004, it must have been. And there's this guy from Sex and the City, and now his name is escaping me, but like they call him the Funky Spunk guy. So he's in one episode with, how do we say this classy? Unpleasant tasting,
with Monkey Spunk.
Yes. And he was with someone.
Well, you don't know the medical term for that? You gotta hit the books.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up once I start nursing school. Yeah. And he was with someone that was like one of the main stars of the 8 Mile movie with Eminem. And I didn't they were sitting together eating dinner. And so I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I loved you in Sex in the City. You're the Funky Spunk guy." And he was like, "Hi, how you doing?" He introduces himself. So I get their food or their drinks or whatever, and I go back to, the server station. And one of the other servers was like, "Oh my gosh, are you waiting on table 5? That guy from 8 Mile?" And I was like, "Who's that?" And I think, I think the 8 Mile guy was like way more famous, but I was like, "Oh my God, who cares? I'm waiting on the Funky Spunk guy." And all of my coworkers were like,
"You must have made that guy's day."
Yeah. And all my coworkers are like, "You're like the epitome of face palm right now." And I was like, "What? It's Sex in the City."
Yeah. There are definitely some sort of like B or C level celebrities that better hope to never run into me in an airport. Like if you were in Twin Peaks or Tron, just know that I have questions and I'm gonna want to talk about it.
Yeah, like especially be warned if it's like early in the morning and good old Tim is feeling chatty and it's an early flight and
I'm usually pretty respectful when I see people like that in public, though. I usually don't like bother people. But like I said, if you were in Twin Peaks, so we're gonna talk about
it's fair game. Well, then it's fair game. So,
yeah, you might be changing your seat on the plane, and
like get away from this guy.
It is funny though how there are certain things that kind of bring out that like childhoodness in all of us that we get stupidly excited over. That's it's okay to do that. That's something that like other generations didn't really have. It's like we're some of the first people in the existence of humanity who get to experience those sort of feelings, because our lives are so much easier than trying to hunt a buffalo with our bare hands, like
that is true. And even like our parents' generation, I couldn't imagine my dad like, Facebooking his favorite celebrity and writing a comment,
right.
So
I saw this beautiful moment yesterday in this reminded me why sometimes I stay on Facebook, that I'm in a couple of groups on Facebook that are sort of like kind of like maybe like making fun of boomers a little bit, like stuff that people find elsewhere. And this one woman posted this thing about how her dad had started a cheese bread site that like basically where he was putting his photos of like melted cheese on bread, and he had all these different things going. He was like, he told her that there's only 2 other cheese bread sites on Facebook, and one had 70 viewers and one had 70 followers, one had 100, and he wanted to beat them. And after she posted it, the guy was up over like 1,500. And people were really, and it wasn't like the bullshit like, "Oh, let's make fun of cheese dad." Everybody was like really excited about this cheese bread. And like you could tell that this guy had recently retired, and he was like, he joked to his daughter, he's like, "I'm gonna, this is gonna be my ticket to going viral and having a food blog." And it was just such a heartwarming little slice of life that I got to experience for like, 2.5 minutes of my day yesterday. That's making me smile again today. And it's just, internet's not all bad.
It's not. And now I kind of want to go check out this cheese bread page.
I know. I think it's called Cheese Bread Love. So yeah, spread the word. you know.
Definitely going to. We need more pure content like that, I feel.
I
More
know.
feel good things.
Because the thing is, you and I spend most of the interactions you and I have is like me liking a comment you made in the Rancho Relaxo Simpsons group on Facebook. And it was funny because now, like, I saw John pop up the other day, and I saw some of my friends pop up, and I'm like, this really feels like home now. It's like a
It
corner of the
does.
internet that most of the time actually feels nice, you know.
Oh, I squealed with joy when I saw my brother post his first post in the Simpsons Rancho Relaxo group, and I was like, oh yes, like that's actually truthfully, Facebook used to be like my go-to for everything, and the only time I kind of log on is to like check on what's going on with Rancho Relaxo and the Simpsons now, because again, feel good content, right?
You know what's funny is I probably don't want to admit this because people are going to unfollow me, but you know the thing you can do where you can stay friends but not see anybody's content.
Unfollow.
I think maybe it isn't. Yeah, it's not. Instead of unfriend, it's unfollow. Yeah, I
Yes.
did that to almost everybody. So now when I go on, there's a few people who, since I've done it, I've become friends with it. I haven't done it to yet, but I try to make the Facebook experience just about those things that I know are going to be like, because it's like, there's only so much of people's personal lives that like I want to take on to it's like, it becomes a lot, you know,
Yeah.
positive or negative. And like, it's
Yeah.
not like I'm not finding out when things happen to people, but like
Right.
that has drastically improved my Facebook experience.
Brilliant. I didn't think to do that. I only do that if someone like upsets me, I guess. But like I didn't think to like really clean
It's
out
the opposite. Somebody has to really show their worth to like make it. Because I
I get
didn't
it.
unfollow you. Like there's people who I know because they're irresponsible posters. Like, and I'll be honest, somebody posted something, a meme, someone I consider a friend posted a meme on Instagram a few weeks ago that I'm still thinking about. Like, that I'm still like, I like it's still rubbing me the wrong way. And
Yeah.
if you know you can be sensitive about that stuff, and it's made me think about things, and it's actually been a positive experience thinking about it. But like, it's so easy to be set off by things on the internet. And I have a policy of you'll never find me in the comment section. Like you'll never find me arguing on the internet. Like that is, if you do, it's an imposter because I refuse to argue on the internet.
I think that's probably feeding back into like taking care of your mental health, because I mean, what good does that do is the
Yeah,
thing.
I
What
know.
good does it do? I mean, yeah, I can't think of a time when someone has left one of those arguments feeling better about themselves.
Right.
Like,
No one has a trophy shelf at home of their victories of winning arguments on the internet. It's all
yeah,
a draw. You've both lost.
exactly. And I don't know. It's such a it's such a mixed bag with social media and like this hyper connectivity we have. But at the end of the day, don't we all just want to find joy,
That's very
right?
true. That's the
And
key
be
here.
happy and just live a good life. And the people that do take the time to make arguments and nasty comments and stuff, it's like I can't imagine that brings them joy. But
I can't imagine what's going on. And I hope those people find a way to, you know,
yeah, go meditate. Go
yeah.
meditate.
It's like
Go.
there's no keyboard warrior awards.
No, and let's hope they don't start one unless we slide into.
That sounds like something that would be on like Spike TV. I saw that Dana White is having a slapping competition where it's going to be, and this is crazy. Okay, so this is for after this we can wrap it up, but he's starting something, and it's probably already, actually this episode's coming in a few weeks, so I think it's just coming now, where it's basically like UFC except you only slap each other and they have training and all this stuff. But then the other day there was footage of him and his wife getting into a slap fight at a party when they were drunk. And I'm just like, what is with this dude and slapping? Like she slapped him first and he slapped her back.
What?
And then they started I guess, and it's the video's out there. I don't know. I didn't see it. I just read about it. So go look it up. But then at the same time, he's pitching this slap championship thing. I'm like, what is happening?
So I'll leave you on this for this point.
You're gonna want to
When
go
I
Google
hear
that as
things,
soon as possible.
right, but when you hear things like this, do you not think, oh my gosh, we're in the movie Idiocracy with Owen
I
Wilson?
just saw that for the first time
Oh
in
wait,
the
it's
past
Owen
couple of
Wilson, right?
years. Yeah. And it was Luke
No,
Wilson.
Luke Wilson,
Yeah.
right? But is a slapping competition televised nonetheless, not directly from that movie or something, right?
Especially with all we know about like head trauma. Like, I mean, like, really? Like, that can't be good for CTE. The amount of practice slaps you got to take, like, it's, I don't know. Where are
Sometimes
we?
I worry about humanity sometimes.
Yeah, we're deep in the multiverse now. I mean, it's
We
like
are. But
there's
wait,
gonna
we
be
have,
like a kicking in the balls contest soon enough, I'm sure. Like that, how far off is that really? Like,
if slapping is already a thing, that's not
right.
too far behind. But we have to wrap this up on a positive note. How do we wrap this up on a positive note?
I tried to, and we did. One more crazy Hollywood story. I was trying to think if there's any that are good to share.
One more holiday
Yeah,
story?
yeah. No, I mean Hollywood story. Any
Oh, Hollywood.
yeah.
Oh gosh, oh gosh,
Um,
oh gosh.
I'll share one quick one. I was at a show at the Troubadour, and I'm a huge Digital Underground fan, and I love them completely. And I was going there to see some kind of independent hip hop artist, The Perceptionist and Murs. And this is years ago. And I'm at the bar sitting there, and there's a guy, and I'm by myself. There's a guy behind me, a big, tall black guy, and he's really macking on these two women. And I was like, this guy's voice is so familiar. I can't figure out who he is. And I'm not going to interrupt him because he's got stuff going on. And afterwards, Humpty Hump comes out in the middle of the show, and I was like, that was him. And I was like, in like Digital Underground, I can't really undersell how much of an influence they had on me in terms artistically and creatively and like, and I was like, oh, it was better than meeting him, sort of, which is sort of
Yeah.
having that experience, So, and I tried to get him on my album, but unfortunately, I was in conversations with his manager right around the time he passed away, and it didn't happen. So,
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a pretty Hollywood story right there. So,
yeah,
that's a
I don't
good
know.
that's a good ribbon on the Hollywood chapter right there.
Yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
know. So,
Well, here we are.
here we are. It's been a pleasure, Kim. I could talk to you forever. I can't. Wow, we did go pretty long on this, huh? All right, we'll
Yeah.
cut out all your parts. It'll just be my parts.
But I mean, that would make it a lot more interesting, to be honest. But
Yeah,
no, man, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on here and
yeah. So one
chatting
more
about.
quick plug for your book, Dear
Yeah.
Diary, Cancer's Back, Gimme Snacks, My Salty Sweet Saga 2.0 by Kimberly Tronic. As I cut you off to give you a plug.
Hey, either way, I'll take whatever I can get, man. But
Yeah.
it's always great catching up with you. I love hearing about your creative endeavors and all your exciting projects, and you inspire me as just as much as likewise. So I appreciate you as well because
It's awesome.
you're keeping me going on my creative adventures too. So I thank you for that, sir.
Yeah, you're an amazing person. I love you. I take every opportunity to tell you that, and I appreciate everything about you. So everybody else will love you as well. Be her patient. Read her book. You'll be better for it. So
Signing off on all that. Absolutely. Thanks again, my
all
friend.
right,
I appreciate you.
later.